Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys we're going to be talking about blatant cheating in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, there should be a video that's already been uploaded on the channel by the time you see this, that I was talking about just soft cheating in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Talking about the difference between just blatant cheating in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And just making an honest mistake that is cheating nonetheless, but it's an honest mistake, and everybody does those honest mistakes from time to time in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So let's talk about the other end of the spectrum now. We talked about what's an honest mistake, what's the difference between an honest mistake that is still cheating and blatant cheating in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So, and how to watch out for it and the different tricks out there. Now there's a whole bunch of different ways players can cheat in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I played Pokemon when I was younger, and I've played Yu-Gi-Oh! For a long time. And I'm almost 27 years old, so I've seen a lot of different ways. I've seen the old sleight of hand where they draw 2 cards in the opening hand. You know, I remember back when the new ruling came out where instead of drawing 6 cards in your opening hand, so you draw your 5 cards, then on your first turn you draw 1 card. I remember people still, when people were coming back in the game or coming to locals and they hadn't played Yu-Gi-Oh! In like a couple of years, they would still do that, and I'm like, dude, you can't do that. And they're like, oh damn, I made a mistake. So even though that's kind of blatant cheating, there's a little bit of wiggle room there for certain players that are coming back into the game. They don't know new mechanics, how things work. I mean, it happens all the time. New players are coming back into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And they don't understand everything. I've seen that happen because they're so used to drawing that 6-card opening turn. They kind of forget time to time. But there are other ways. I mean, I've seen players just draw 2 cards, or if you're not paying attention to them, they'll draw another card and kind of sneak it into their hand without you knowing. That's one of the things why I've always asked players, every time it's my turn, how many cards do you have? How many cards do you have? And especially back in the day, it was a lot easier to keep track of. But now, because there's so many combos and everything, and you got to pay attention to their graveyard and their field and their hand, it's not always about their hand advantage. You know, it's a little bit harder to do that, but I'm always ask a player, how many cards do you have in hand? As soon as it's my turn, how many cards do you have in hand? I'll count their cards out. I'll ask them to flush their cards out sometimes if I'm kind of suspicious of that one person. You'll know what I mean if you've played against them multiple times, but usually with every player I play with, just for trying to gain advantage over my opponent, I always ask for their hand size. Doesn't mean I don't think they're cheating or not. I just always do that as a thing, so I know, okay, should I put all my pieces on the board, or should I just hold back a little bit because they still got 4 cards in their hand and probably have a retaliating play against my play that I make. So it's not always because I think they're cheating. It's just a general thing I do. If you ever played against me before, I always ask hand sizes a lot of the time, especially when I'm in the zone. Other ways I've seen is, and this one I have always wondered, because I did this myself when I was younger, but I still do it, but I don't really pay attention, is shuffling your cards sideways, because you can look at your opponent's cards and their text as they're shuffling and put the bad cards on the top and the good cards on the bottom. I mean, I didn't do that necessarily, but I mean, I always used to shuffle like that because I played with ultra pro sleeves, and I always found it easier to shuffle opponent's deck doing that. So what I started to do as I go older is, I mean, sometimes I don't pay. If I'm at locals, I'll just do this. I'm just like, yep, and I'll be talking to my opponent and just not even paying attention to me shuffling really, and then I'll cut it sideways like this. So I do it when I cut. People are like, "Oh my gosh, you cut so many different ways." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the way I do, because I don't want people to think I'm trying to stack their deck or anything." But I'll shuffle like this sometimes. But that's a way people can cheat, so they can see what deck they're doing. They'll do that, and I know some players out there who are very competitive. They'll be so on that, like, don't do that. I had one person say that to me one time at a regionals. I was like, "Dude, I'm just shuffling your deck." I'm like, "I'll do this for you too." And he's like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay. But if it annoys you, I'm sorry. I'm just shuffling the deck. Nothing else, no problem. But I'll do it this way too, in case you're worried, and I'll cut it this way." So like I've done it a whole bunch of different ways, so people don't think I'm cheating, because that's just the way I am. Like that's my comfortable zone of just shuffling cards like this, and then I'll shuffle like this, you know, back and forth. I don't have a deck of cards in front of me, otherwise I'd show you more properly. And then sometimes I'll even like I'll break their deck down even more than that. But there's 1,000 different ways you could do it. I'll cut their deck, slide it, do a whole bunch of different things. And even with players, if I've seen them do this sometimes, and I'm not too familiar with the player, or they kind of give me that wrong vibe sometimes, I'll even like cut my deck afterwards. They give it back to me. I'll just go cut, and they're like, okay. And I'm like, there you go. So just doing that so that way I don't feel like I'm being cheated so really. But I know that all players do it to some degree. Some people, players out there that I know that played for years, they still do this, you know, shuffling sideways, but they're not really paying attention. I know when you look at worlds and top tables, sometimes what they'll do is they'll look away from when they're shuffling. And that's, I think, the best way of doing that. I do that a lot of times now as I've gotten older, just to make sure I don't ruffle anybody's feathers. There's a whole slew of different ways. I've seen players, and back in the day, you know, I have to admit, I have cheated in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! As well, and people might say, Seto, you've cheated in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, yes, I screw the rules from time to time. The main time I screwed the rules was when I was a young lad, and I was playing against my brother, and I wanted to beat my brother, so I just pretended that tribute summoning was not a thing in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I just tribute summoned for 3 blue eyes white dragon and killed him for game. His Dark Magician didn't stand a chance. So literally, I'm just talking about like back in the day, because I think if you played this game when you were very young, and you watched the original Duelist Kingdom anime, you definitely probably cheated in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! From the get-go at least some point in time, because you didn't pay attention to, you know, the fact that, oh, I have to make tribute summons in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, I forgot that was a thing. I thought the anime knew what it was talking about. It's one of the reasons I don't like Duelist Kingdom arc that much. I love the arc, but it's just those weird rulings, like Swords of Revealing Light or the Illusion Castle, and then Gaia can destroy no. You don't have to tribute for Blue Eyes White Dragon or Dark Magician or Summon Skull. Yeah, that's legit. Imagine if the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Did not involve tribute summoning. Do you know how many good cards would be out there? How many good cards would be out there right now? We could use, and like Dark Ruler Hadass would be good against Burning Abyss. But that's a tangent for a different day, talking about the old days. But yes, back on the topic here. There's different ways people can cheat. Hand, shuffling, things of that nature. There was one time I remember, and I heard about this, but I never interacted with this person. I heard about this one time with this one guy. He pretended to drop one of his cards. Literally, he was like acting like Bandit Keith. And mind you, this was back in like, I think 04, 05, when I was about 15 years old. It was out of regionals. It was this guy that was like in his late teenager years, early adulthood years, apparently at the regionals, that got kicked out or DQ'd because what he was doing was he was dropping a card sometimes if he was in a losing position, and then he would slide a card in the same card sleeve out of his, like, he didn't have like a mechanic anything, but he would like literally slide it out where he had a card stuck in his shoe. So he would pull it out of his shoe, and one of the guys noticed that he was having trouble, like he was taking quite a while to drop, you know, he was dropping these cards, and he noticed that in the previous match he had dropped his cards, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just, you know, a little tired and all this. And the guy had a card stuck in his shoe and was yanking it out, like Bandit Keith, like pulling a card from your ass, like, ugh. I heard about that. I was like, I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what the rumor was at the time at that regionals. I remember hearing about that. I was like, dude, that's just stupid. That's interesting. That's innovative, but that's not cool. And then there's different ways. Different people interpret differently. I know, like with the Patrick Hobbit thing years ago with the Daijin thing. Oh, I side out a Daijin. If you side out a Daijin, and then he sided in another Daijin. You know, there's different little things like that where people think that it's very smart or it's just blatant cheating. And I'm not going to go into that specific event, but there's different little things because different players out there will consider it cheating and other players out there will consider it gaining advantage. But if the overall consensus of it, I feel like, of the community is that is cheating, then that is cheating in my book. And I think there's a great difference, as I talk about this here, guys, where there's a difference, and there is definitely a difference between somebody that's just blatantly cheating and somebody that's just made an honest mistake and is learning how their deck works or a card interaction works, or is tired and just makes a mistake when you're at locals and you just, you know, things of that nature. There's different things, but you always have to pay attention, and the reason for this video is you always have to pay attention to who you're playing out there, because I've seen things that, you know, I know that guy, he wouldn't do that, he wouldn't blatantly cheat, but then there's other guys out there where I see them and I know they didn't make an honest mistake, and I'm kind of like, I know you drew that extra card, I know you did that, So like I saw that, and I've had players do that to me before. I'm like, I've seen player draw an extra card, and I'm like, well, I don't know if he was just tired, or if he just wasn't paying attention, or is he trying to just cheat? Because I've seen players do that before. So you always have to pay attention. There's different ways people cheat out there in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh. There's ways to mitigate it by paying attention to the game and paying attention to your opponent, which really sucks that we're in this game. But because Yu-Gi-Oh has very low prize support, and it's one of the reasons why, even though I would love I would love to see amazing prize support in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, it would have me a little worried, because I think people would be more inclined to cheat in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh because, you know, they're dueling for money and things of that nature. But I'm not quite sure if that's true. We would have to look at other card games to see that. But there will always be cheaters in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And there are ways you can stop it by paying attention to your opponents, paying attention to what they're doing, and reading their bloody cards when they think that it does one thing, because they may not even trying to cheat, but you let them cheat because you didn't read their card and say, dude, that's not the proper way to do that. This is the proper way that card works. So they'll be like, oh, my bad, I made an honest mistake, sorry about that. Or they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm sure. When they do things like that, we're like, yeah, okay, like blow it off. You kind of like say, well, I think they were cheating, because usually a guy that's like, oh, that was an honest mistake, I apologize. They're usually the ones I notice that are not cheating as much. Sometimes they will do that, but there are slimy people out there in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh. There's slime balls out there. There's bad guys, but just like the anime, if you watch the anime, you see people cheat sometimes on there. I mean, you can be very innovative if you're trying to cheat. And I've seen a bunch of different things, but those are just some of the main ones I've seen. You know, card shuffling, deck thinning. Back when, and I know this is more in the theft department, but I remember this happening a lot back when Monster Reborn was a thing in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! When before that card got banned, is that people would like use Monster Reborn a card of yours, and then it would go to your graveyard, go to their graveyard, and they wouldn't be paying attention that it actually was supposed to go to your opponent, back to your graveyard. They were just like, okay, I reborn Blackluster Soldier, or, you know, a very expensive card. I reborn Dark Armed Dragon, and now I'm going to put Dark Armed Dragon in my graveyard, and then I'm going to put my cards away and, you know, walk away with them. And back when Monster Reborn was a thing, I heard stories about cards getting jacked and stolen because they just didn't, the players, you were not paying attention to what the opponent was doing. And I know that still happens time to time. I still see it happen when I'm playing GOAT format or older formats with Monster Reborn is legal, and it's an honest mistake sometimes, but you always have to pay attention to that. So those are my things out there, guys. People will try to cheat, and you always just have to be cautious of people that you don't know that well. And number two, pay attention. If you're paying attention, I bet you dollars to donuts that you will catch somebody cheating, and you will be able to say, dude, just stop that. No. Like, I know it's kind of hard, and I'm not like the best person to talk about this topic, but believe me, paying attention, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, paying attention to your opponent is gonna if you're paying attention and you're interacting with them a lot more. I noticed that players, I don't know, but it's a hypothesis of mine, I guess you could say, as in this video, if you're paying attention more, they're not gonna be as inclined to cheat because they don't feel like they can get away with something. If you're paying attention and you're interacting with them a lot, they're not gonna cheat as much because they'll be like, well, if I can't blatantly cheat this guy, because if I do, he's going to notice because he's paying attention to everything and everything going on and asking questions and things of that nature. So unless they're and he seems familiar with the deck, so you always have to be on your toes, pay attention, and I think you'll be better off. And things of that nature. Those are just my thoughts, guys, on blatant cheating. And also this video is, again, to talk about the different types of cheating in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! But till next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling. Tell me, guys, what are some innovative ways you've seen some people cheat in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! To get just an upper edge upon their opponent? I'd be quite interested to see some ingenious ways, like that one guy that I talked about that had Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards in his shoes, and he would pull them out with the same sleeves on them. That was interesting. But till next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.